Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of Baka. We are an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks, we talk about a new anime that we have watched separately. We come together on the podcast. We talk about it together. When we're done, we turn it over to our audience to add in the things that we miss, the things we don't understand, because let's face it, you guys are smarter than us. You still listen to us, but you know what? That's just the world we live in today.
Must not be a lot of choices.
We have a great anime that I'm super excited to talk about today. But first, let me introduce my co-host. First off, we have the Matthew Lawrence to my Boy Meets World, Jeremy. How you doing, man?
Doing okay. Now, is that the older brother? Did I get it right?
Of the Lawrence brothers, he's the middle one. And on Boy Meets World, he was the older brother's best friend.
Oh, okay. Man, it's been so long. You know, it's the shows. I remember when I was a kid watching it, and I was actually creeped out by it. I don't know why it creeped me out.
Boy Meets World?
Yeah, it creeped me out. Like I don't know what it was, but the show, just the tone of it and everything was uncomfortable. Strange. But anyways, I'm doing great.
What you been up to?
Actually, I have been playing a bunch of RimWorld between class assignments just to decompress.
What's RimWorld?
RimWorld!
Okay.
I got a new set of 100 mods, Troy. Let me go through them. I have vampires, and I have werewolves, and I have Cthulhu, and right now I've got a cult of like 7 people that get every evening they come together and they worship in their cult temple that I built. They're trying to summon it.
You did this, Troy. You did
it. I literally asked for it. Now we're getting it.
Yep.
Okay, you can literally see our podcast views just diving as he goes on. All right.
You just haven't been inducted into the cult of Cthulhu, Rimworld.
Our other host is the Joey Lawrence to my Blossom, Jason. How are you?
I have. So I've been following Apex Legends pretty close, and it got such terrible reviews across the board that I went and played more Warframe because they got a new content released. So
did it?
Yeah,
Apex Legends got terrible reviews. I heard it was like a Fortnite killer.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Apex Legends is huge. I don't get
No. I meant Anthem.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Anthem.
Yeah. Anthem
makes perfect sense.
But so it's funny because watching the reviews for Anthem made me want to play Warframe again.
You want to get that ice sliding around, leaping, twisting, spinning.
Looter shooter, yeah. And also like they released some other frames. Like they've got 2 new frames since I started playing, plus like some other ones were unlocked that I didn't get a chance to get at. So back to the grind, but I don't know. It's nice to go back.
Yeah. I heard that Anthem actually has, instead of loot, they just have like colored blocks of stats that you pick up and put on. I haven't like figured out exactly what they were talking about in the podcast I was listening to. But
they've made quite a few improvements to different things in the past like week, but that's one of the big criticisms is that why is this being patched now? Why wasn't this something that was released with the game?
Mm-hmm. And how's Troy, the awesome girl character?
All right. There is another Lawrence brother. Jeez. I'm good. I got to watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and I really liked it. That was really cool. I wanted to see it in theaters. I didn't get a chance. I don't go to theaters that often. And it came out this week, and so I actually bought it because my kids have been begging me to have it. So we bought it, and we all watched it today as a family. It was a really cool story. Loved Jake Johnson as a fat Peter Parker who's just kind of depressed. Jake Johnson is a personal hero of mine, and so yeah, I absolutely love that movie. It was really good.
That is definitely on my list to watch. I would have liked to have seen it in theaters.
Yeah, it was cool. Okay, let's talk about the anime we're here to talk about. And like I said, I'm super excited about this one because we just got done with our watching older stuff, and I had already seen all those. And then we watched Release the Spice, which was not spicy.
It was something.
It was something new, but there wasn't a whole lot of depth to it, and so this felt like, to me, a little pre-review, non-spoiler, it was meaty. This felt meaty to me. But so a couple facts about the anime. It's SSSS Gridman. It is a sequel spin-off inspired by the original Gridman live-action show in Japan, which is part of a series that includes or a genre that includes Godzilla, what is Ultraman. The power? What Ultraman? What is also the Power Rangers in Japan?
Wait, Ultraman is the Power Rangers in Japan?
No, it's the same genre. Power Rangers are the same genre as Ultraman and Gridman, and so they made this anime. Like I said, that's kind of a sequel / spinoff, kind of inspired by. It's directed by Akira Amamiya. It is written by Kiichi Hasegawa, who has written for the actual Ultraman show, Kamen Rider, which I believe is Power Rangers. He wrote The Big O and Rage of Bahamut Genesis.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, quite some credentials on that guy.
Yeah.
The studio was Trigger, which I'm sure everyone on this podcast loves the studio. They made Kill La Kill. They made Darling in the Franxx. They made Kiss Sniper. And so...
it registered.
I'll be honest, when I watched the first episode, I was like, I get a Kiss Sniper vibe from this. And I was like, oh no, she's just going to lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know what SSSS stands for?
I do.
Would you
but
enlighten us?
We will talk about it in our spoiler section because it is a spoiler.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the plot, and it is a big spoiler to reveal it here. So we are going to talk about it. I have written it down, but it is revealed in the anime.
Okay.
But it was very quick. It was just a flash on the computer screen. Anyway, let's go to our non-spoiler review section. I already kind of gave mine away. This was really cool. As someone who's a big fan of, especially Godzilla growing up to me was huge. This had a lot of cool feels to it. The kaiju were really cool. You know, Ultraman wasn't really my thing. Power Rangers weren't really my thing, but I still enjoyed the references that I noticed. And there is some depth of storytelling here. There's a lot more going on than giant robot fights kaiju, even though that's what's on the surface. And so I absolutely loved that. And there's a mystery going on that I felt was really well paced, and I was super hooked by. It's not a perfect anime by any means, but for me, I was super into it. How about you guys?
I was actually a little bored in the first 5 episodes. I loved Ultraman as a kid, but I think that was because I liked the monsters better than I liked Ultraman. I know, right? But you know, the teen drama was very run of the mill. So were the fights, and then episode 6 hit, and I was just like, "Yeah, I'm not watching a robot fighting big monster anime, am I?" So yeah, it was. I ended up really liking it. Yeah.
Okay, Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this anime. It tries to be both the Power Ranger lighthearted silliness, which that's probably the closest thing I'm familiar with. I mean, I did see a few of the old Godzilla movies when I was a kid, but I didn't get to see any Ultraman or anything like that. So I know the cheesy B-movie grade combat scenes and definitely the big men in suits in cardboard cities fighting. It handles that really well, and it definitely carries that. But at the same time, it hits the vibe of a character drama for teens, almost like an angsty. I don't know what to compare it to, because I've usually like really hated
Kid
these shows.
Sniper.
Yeah, kind of.
No,
It seemed to have
I would not agree with that.
more depth and less hinging on emotion. Like there was a lot more unsaid than there was.
I agree.
Also, not once
emotions.
Not once did I see a map for shipping.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
However, shipping plays a major role in the plot.
Does it?
It does.
I mean, it does. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
no, it doesn't. It's definitely it's not main plot.
It certainly is like a foundational thing.
Yeah.
Like it's required for the plot to exist.
I'll explain it when we get there because I was actually like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I was kind of wondering how you guys thought about it, so I will bring it up.
I probably blinded myself too.
There are no relationships here. They are all romance.
Okay. What did we think of the opening and the closing?
The opening was okay. I actually didn't like the music too much, but the visuals were decent. I actually really liked the ending. The ending was nearly unsettling from the first couple episodes. And also just the music was good. Yeah, I like the ending a lot more than I like the opening.
Actually, I'm kind of the opposite. I really liked the opening. The music of the opening was fantastic for me. But in the ending, there's I think you nailed it. It's very uncomfortable, very strange, almost weird. Like a lot of the imagery in it, I'm trying to figure out like what is it trying to tell me, because it's not really the imagery from the show. Like I don't remember those scenes being in the show at all ever, and so it's so weird.
Or those characters having a good relationship.
Yeah, it just didn't happen in the world we're witnessing, and that gives it a lot of really cool depth.
Yeah, like Jason said, the first time I heard the ending, I was like, eh. But after you get a few episodes in, you see those images, and you're like, okay, I need to pay attention to this. But I agree with Jason or Jeremy about the intro. I agree because I thought it was really good. They also did the thing where they changed some of the imagery as the plot changed. Episode 11 specifically had a bloody knife. And some other stuff, and I love that. Like, but I thought the song was cool, especially once they added the words too, and I got to understand what the words meant, and then I was really into the song. I'm a sucker for that. All right, then let's go to our spoiler section. So everything we say from now on will be exactly what happened within this story, to the best of our understanding. We're going to talk about characters, themes, plots. We're going to dig through all of it and get a lot wrong, but if you haven't seen it, it will be spoiled for you. So that is your warning and your decision on what to do next. But we're going to go on ahead, and we're going to start at the very beginning. SSSS Gridman takes place in what seems like a small city in Japan, and we see a young girl who we'll talk about later see a light in the sky that breaks into pieces and falls down to earth. After that, we have an amnesiac boy wake up in a different girl's home. And this is a weird way to start the anime because I was like, I don't feel like anyone's properly reacting to the fact that a boy suddenly has amnesia and is just wandering around your home. And then he sees a computer turn on and there's a guy on there talking to him.
A robot
man, yeah, which is Gridman. But this character, the boy, is Yuta Hibuki. And Hibuki. Yep, but he's Yuta. And he's the red-haired protagonist. And what did we think about him?
I thought he was run-of-the-mill protagonist.
Yeah, he didn't really stand out to me as anything special, but he filled the role just fine. I did enjoy some of the twists that they did with his motivations later.
I think he was much more interesting when he was dealing with his feelings towards the girls in this particular group of theirs, because he ends up having strong feelings for one, but then he doesn't know what to do with his feelings for the other one. Especially when they end up in the dream episode. That's a really that was neat to watch him deal with that inner conflict. So, but besides that, yeah, he was I'm going to fight for justice because it's justice.
And the funny thing is that they did a good job of giving him a reason to be that way later in the anime, where
Right.
you can now look back at it and be like, okay, yeah, he's very tropey, but it actually fits here. Like, it's legit.
Yeah, and I think it's completely intentional. They want this character to feel like, yeah, I'll sign up to be a Power Ranger. Why wouldn't I? And also, while this is our main character, he is not in my opinion, the main character, which is really interesting. That he's not as interesting as he could have been. Okay, the girl whose house / junk store coffee shop.
Yeah, it seems like a pawn shop, coffee shop,
Yeah.
where you can order food
And just hang out there all day.
Yes. Yep.
Her name is Rika. She's a huge hit on the internet. If you go to this the Reddit for this anime, her and the other main girl are have their fans.
I believe it.
What did we think of Rika?
Out of the three main characters, I thought she was the most interesting. Not only did she have the most to contribute as far as non-superhero, but she seemed to have that level head, like, this, no matter what's happening, this is what we need to do, kind of thing. But she also, she had her own teen conflict. So I actually enjoyed watching her because she was the morally wish-washy one, where she wanted to take the upper road at all times, even though that road may not have been available to her.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting how she interacted with some of the other people on her team, and especially in the episode where she gets accused of being emotional because she wants to take that road of like, hey, let's try and solve this conflict with words instead of action. And I really enjoyed the way that they brought it back around with her and how they resolved that. But she's the one character that they kept going to scenes where she's like laying in her room on her bed, listening to her headphones, just kind of zoning out, clearly thinking about something, but we're not privy to what she's exactly thinking about. And that to me is what consistently again and again lent this sort of teen drama depth. I don't know why this particular setting and scene does it so well, but there's something about like the teen metacognition where maybe for the first time a young person is starting to sit outside of their own mind and try to evaluate their situation. I don't know, but that it's kind of seemed like it was trying to capture that, and I thought it did a pretty good job using her as the focus for it.
There's also, we have Yuta, who is the go-hung protagonist. I'm going to save the day, justice. I'm all about justice. We have the other character we're going to meet in a little bit. He's the geeky fanboy. He's in his element. She initially doesn't want to be a part of this, and kind of only is because Gridman happens to live in her store because the computer junk happens to be located there. But becomes involved because people she cares about and aren't even close friends with someone she considered a friend, dies and disappears. And that pulls her in. So she kind of has this different motivation than everyone else, where she's still trying to be a normal person having a life, but is trying to protect that normal life and protect her friends in that normal life. It's not about justice or even like a morality thing. It's, I just want my world to stay the same. And I think Jeremy really hit on it when we see scenes of her just kind of sitting with her earphones in and stuff. What the anime is trying to tell us something about what she's going through. This is more than just, hey, cool, giant robots and monsters. And I really appreciated that about her.
Mm-hmm.
And we, like I said, we meet the robot character Gridman, who's not much of a personality. He's like, hey, Yuta, we have to save day. Come on.
Yeah.
Yep.
But only Yuta can see him on this computer, and he thinks that's kind of weird, but they're like, hey, we're going to take you to the hospital. you go to our school. You just collapsed outside of our house. And Rika, agrees to take him to the hospital. They go outside. They note it's really misty. It's really foggy. That'll become important. And he notices giant kaiju frozen in place just all over the city. And she can't see him. And so this anime is very unsettling at the start because you have no idea what's real. You have an unreliable, protagonist who's our focal point. One of the reasons he has amnesia is so we also have to be explained what's going on, but he doesn't really find out what's going on. I went a lot of back and forth on, am I frustrated that he just is like, okay, well, I guess there's giant kaiju. I guess I'll just ignore that. But also, what would you do if you came outside and no one else saw the giant kaiju and you can't make it not appear? I guess I go home.
I felt they sold it decently because of the Gridman stuff at first. Because I think what happened is he started questioning his own sanity, even though he had a rationale about him. So, I have amnesia. I'm now, for the sake of argument, hallucinating at this point. They suggest I should go to the hospital. I should probably do that. I go to the hospital. They say I'll be fine, but I'm not fine yet. So then I see these huge things out in the world. No one else sees them. These must be part of those hallucinations. That's kind of how it was sold to me. But I did love how all of these kaiju, often the ones beyond the mist, they called them, they all looked like Godzilla.
Yes, they did. Yep.
Fun fact, they are actually a monster from the Gridman show.
Oh, they are?
They are. Which... Yeah. I mean, there's actually a couple monsters that have Godzilla-ish designs, and I'm sure there's a little bit of reason for that, probably because that's also a really easy suit to put a actor in. Someone of that shape.
So true.
But yeah, they are actual poison-spewing monsters from the original Gridman show.
Oh, no kidding. That's what they did in the original, is they spew poison. Okay, because they mentioned that later.
Not to the same effect that we find out in this show, but yeah, they are taken from it. So they go to the hospital. They hang out afterwards. They grab some food. She takes him to his apartment after they call one of his friends to get the address. He goes to his home. There's no parents. He finds out, my parents must be traveling. The next day, he goes to school and he meets the friend they called, who is Utsume. He is a geeky, kaiju loves the Ultraman series, and he's kind of if this was the Ultraman series, this would happen. And he can kind of explain stuff to everyone else. Also kind of useless, which I thought was really interesting how much they hammered on and then didn't change. I thought for sure he was going to turn into a weapon at some point. What did you guys think of Utsume?
I thought he was the Chim Chim of this show. I actually didn't really like him because not only when he was arguing with Rika did his arguments not make any sense, and his unwillingness to give ground in his arguments, which kind of upsets me on a personal level. But yeah, his I didn't really find him useless. Yeah, he didn't do anything like physically, but I mean, he was there for Yuta. He was part of the plan making, which in most cases was frustrating to watch. And also he was, in this first fight, we find out that he's the one that, identified a weak spot, right? So, I didn't mind him too much, but as far as like a character ranking, he's really low for me.
I wonder what the difference is between the dub and the sub, because in the sub, he's not that bad. Like his arguments are basically talking isn't going to work, because he even asks her like at some certain point, and he's like, is it going to work? It's not going to work, is it? No. So we have to act. There's no other choice. You're just emotional. But I wonder if it was a dub thing. I wonder if the way that they chose to set up his dialogue maybe came across a little bit differently.
Well, even the way you just said it just now is pretty much how I took it. And
really?
that kind of argumentation is not back and forth argumentation. That's
true.
here's my stance. This is what I think your stance is, and why I think it's dumb. Therefore, we should go with my stance. And it's just okay. She literally lives next door.
Oh my god, I couldn't believe that when they like let's go to our house and they literally just walk to the next door. Blew my mind.
But
they mentioned it quite a few times.
They do. They say that you lived on the same block and stuff, but to see the heroes and
usually there's some sort of
villain,
yeah,
literally being a door apart was like that's so crazy that this has all been happening, you know, through a few feet from the walls.
They share a fence.
Has it though? Because I got the impression that changed in the dream sequence. I got the impression that she rearranged things in the dream sequence to put them close together. Prior to that, I didn't think that they were.
Well, so when they go on the bus for the first time, Rika and our protagonist, or no, antagonist.
Yeah, they're at the station.
They mention how they live really, really close to each other. They didn't say next door, but like we live basically next to each other is what they said.
So this is letting out the cat out of the bag a little early. I consider the plot of SSSS Gridman to be about dealing with depression. And I've been thinking a lot about Utsume and how he thinks he's so worthless. And I was kind of like, I agree with that. You contributed in the first fight, but he wasn't the guy who always noticed the weak point. As a matter of fact, Gridman kind of beats the monsters usually pretty easy. He just powers up and he wins the fight. So there's almost no tactics. So Utsume, who would be the tactic guy, almost serves no purpose the entire anime. And then at the end, they're like, yeah, but we still need you. And I was like, do you? But if the theme of this is dealing with depression, I think maybe they're trying to say, even if you don't have a specific function you can help with, just being there, just wanting to be of a help is in itself a function of helping.
Yeah.
And
my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that. However, story-wise, I found him mostly pretty annoying. He didn't really, he was just kind of like, I'm also going to come. All right, well, if you say so, Utsume.
He had coins, right? To make a phone call.
And he gave their alliance a name.
That's right. There you go.
Just especially compared to some of how distinct some of the characters are that we'll meet later. Yeah, this one didn't really do it.
Yeah, he didn't have a very strong flavor.
Yeah. They go to class, and so Yuta is trying to deal. Everyone's like, "Oh, you have amnesia. Well, you still got to go to school." One day later, that's what I think that's probably a Japanese culture thing over an American culture thing, but that seemed weird to me.
If you forgot everything, we better start teaching you right away.
And we meet a lot of his classmates. There's a scene here where the quirky girl, who we're going to talk about later, I'm saving her for the next episode, but she offers Yuta his lunch because he forgot his. And the volleyball team accidentally bumps it with their ball and crushes the food.
Yeah.
This was so good. Such a good scene.
And the scene, like, everyone just freezes and everything goes silent. And then things resume. And it seems like such a random thing. And I thought they were building up this character like, she's the odd one. And then I actually watched this first episode again because my daughter is a huge fan of this series and she had put it back on. And I noticed, like, this scene is really important.
Yeah.
But on first glance, it's very innocuous. Mm-hmm. Just very anime run of the mill.
Mm-hmm. Like crazy classroom, isn't that silly shenanigans? And then, yeah, we'll find out later. This is a focal point of destiny. Okay, that might have oversold it a little bit. Utsume wants to meet Gridman. They go back to the shop. Gridman talks to Yuta, but again, no one else can see him. Then a kaiju just suddenly appears in the city, and it blows up the school. And they specifically show that volleyball team is in the school when it happens. And they kind of were building up that character as important too, because they gave her a name. She had a very specific look, and I was like, oh, she's probably going to join the team. and she gets blown to smithereens.
Yep.
Yuta ends up going into the computer, and Gridman appears in the city. So that's kind of how this whole thing works. He goes into the computer, and he fuses with Gridman, and then a real Gridman appears in the real world and can fight the kaiju.
By the way, his entrance is near identical to some of Ultraman's entrances.
Really?
Yes. The fist up in the air coming towards the screen. Yeah.
The growing animation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely... That's definitely a reference for sure. And then he kicks the kaiju's butt, and I absolutely love this kaiju. It's probably my favorite looking kaiju because it has the long neck. If anyone who listens to us likes to watch Mother's Basement's YouTube videos, he has a great video about why the monsters are designed the way they are, and this basically a reference to the old Gridman series and stuff. But I love how like the monsters' eyes just don't work. They're just kind of like googly eyes on the front of it. And it looks, you can animate it any way you want. You can make those eyes do anything you want. And they decided to animate it to look just like it would in the original series. I think that's so cool. And Gridman beats him thanks to Utsume realizing the weakness, which, helped.
Once.
Yeah. One thing I noticed in this first episode was that the sound is super eerie and creepy to me because they put a lot of emphasis on the background noises. The cicadas, the classrooms were super loud and noisy, more than I think I've ever noticed in anime before. But then when Gridman shows up, like rock music starts playing, battle music.
Yeah, actually, so I watched the last half of the anime with my son, and he kept mentioning, like, man, whenever Gridman shows up, it's so epic.
It creates to me, it created such an otherworldly feel in the regular scenes, and then such a battle rock montage in the fight scenes, and I loved what they did with the audio. And then the next day, the city has recovered from the destruction, and the school is back in place.
And nobody remembers kaiju.
Except for our three main characters who are puzzled. A, why is the school not on fire anymore? And B, why does nobody remember what happened yesterday?
And they learn not only do people not remember what happened, the girls who were killed in the attack, no one remembers that they were alive. As a matter of fact, they go talk to their parents, and the parents are like, they died years ago. Why would you even bring them up? And they kind of have to deal with that fallout and stuff. But it's this big mystery of like, why did their existence kind of get erased? That's crazy. Mm-hmm. So now we need to talk about our antagonist, who is Akane. She was that odd girl who gave the food to Yuta in the last episode. We've seen shots of her, but we've never seen her building kaiju in that first episode. And now we actually see her go home, go to her room, which is full of both trash bags and shells of kaiju. And she goes up to a computer, and there's a creature on the computer who brings her kaiju to life. So let's first talk about Akane, our antagonist. What do you guys think?
I loved this character. She was able to, in social settings, mostly keep her cool and be just a normal teenage girl. And then she just ends up in these scenes. So my favorite scene where it sold me was she ends up bumping into her teacher. And her teacher doesn't say, oh, excuse me, sorry. And it upsets her so much. But the camera angle, that up top camera, that fisheye camera angle where the eyes are
like crazy goo.
It is so good. Did we ever find out what are in those trash bags?
I don't think so. I never. To me, I'm not sure if it was trash or if it was clay supplies or what.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, she's got shelves and shelves of these kaiju models, which I thought was rad. Yeah. But yeah, she's oh man, yeah, I really attached to her as a character throughout the series.
Yeah, she is. She's absolutely fascinating. There are still things I cannot figure out about her. I've been thinking about this anime a lot since watching it, and it's so twisted. Like there's so many strange loops that it makes. But they're good. They're really interesting and they're fun to try and figure out. And she's at the core of them all. Every single one of them. They did a fantastic job with, I think probably my favorite parts were how her voice in the sub is so childlike and innocent and sweet and kind. And then she turns out to be this twisted monstrosity. And it's just incredible. I love it when they juxtapose that kind of stuff.
Yeah, she's got a very similar in the dub, except there's these like the scene where she's in the drinking soda with Utsume, and she's drilling him. It makes nicely at first, and then her voice changes to this like, "You're gonna tell me what I want to know."
yeah, and like every time that you see, crazy. And every time you see when she's done drinking something, the straw is always chewed up so bad, which like the sign of tension and stress of a person's psychotic behavior. If they have to do that to that degree every time. Yeah, she's
I love her glasses are broken and her her phone screen's broken.
Well, her phone screen's broken because she throws it repeatedly, and I absolutely love it every time she does it.
Yeah, well, I love that the anime paid attention that glass would have been broken.
Now, when she put her glasses on the first time, were they broken?
I don't remember.
I don't think they were, but I can't remember for sure. And also, I'm not sure, but I think that her computer monitor, which she breaks repeatedly, is sometimes fixed. But mirrors and her phone, like periodically, it's almost like the broken glass that is on everything is just kind of there to remind us that she's broken, right? She is the glass that's shattered. Mm-hmm. And it's very good. There's so many subtleties in it. Very well done.
I'm a little torn about what to say here because there's so much I want to say about this character that has to do with the twist that we really should talk about later and how it addresses. But so I'll just say this antagonist, I think, is the true protagonist of this series. She's what this story is actually about. Everyone else is just here, which makes her super more interesting. And that she is the epitome of depression and self-destruction. And I'll go into reasons why later, but I absolutely loved everything they did with her. I didn't see her being the villain. I thought all these teenagers we were meeting in high school were going to join the Gridman Alliance. I thought this was going to be like, we're all friends. Her becoming the villain, the reason she is a villain, not even really disagreeing with her villainy. In the sense of who hasn't played SimCity and hit, let's bring the monster in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where it's all the difference of how do you see the characters in SimCity? And I think that is her growth and where she changes from being an antagonist to a potential protagonist.
Right. But I think we're saying a little too much.
Yeah. I will button up and bring out the rest at the twist. Which, if you've already watched it, you know that. If not, I leave you in suspense.
Yeah, try and put it together.
Okay. But we need to talk about the creepy dude she's talking to, the posh.
Oh, he's awesome.
Villain. Oh, Akane, only you can build the kaiju I need. Uh-huh. I love this villain's voice. However, as a villain himself, he's very one-dimensional. I am evil because I'm super evil monster because I'm super evil.
It reminded me exactly of Rita from Power Rangers.
Yes. I was thinking the same thing. Yep. Would you say that is it all right to spoil his reason why he's a villain? Because I don't think it reflects anything.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, with him, I thought it was really interesting how they decided to make it that, he's immortal and bored. Like that's his reason. He's like, when you live as long as I do, which is forever, and you can't be killed and you're immortal, you just get bored with things. And so this person's entertaining, so why not facilitate them? And I absolutely loved that they went that direction where it's like, yes, the real antagonist in the background, he really has no motivation, just like what you were saying with Rita and the one-dimensional character and everything. And they held true to that trope from the other show. Very entertaining. Well done.
I don't mind it because he's literally just he's there to explain how this is all possible, but he's like, he's not the purpose of the story. He's not why they're telling the story. He's just you need an explanation. Okay, well, here's the bad guy. There you go.
Well, and it's really weird too, because it creates two not necessarily contradictory, but necessarily coexisting and kind of tripping over each other sources for why the world is the way it is. And it's that's part of what I'm trying to like pull apart and figure out. And I still haven't done it quite right, but yeah, it's going to be fun as we get into talking about these characters.
Well, what's cool is like you get to a point early on in the anime where you're like, oh, Akane is not all that bad. She's just being manipulated by the evil force. And then you're like, oh no, she's just got her own demons.
Yeah.
He's just facilitating her.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, and then our heroes meet a character. We've already seen a flash of him. This strange odd man who carries like 5 swords on his back. And my God, when this man walks through the door, his swords hit the door. It's not that he falls down. It's that he's so committed to his stance that he doesn't try to catch himself when he falls down. Hands in the pockets, shoulders hunched, falls down in that position. He does it twice in a row, and I laugh so hard. This is Caliber. He comes in, he fixes the computer so that now all the kids can see Gridman on it, and kind of brings them into where Yuta's position. And this is Caliber, one of a group of people we'll talk about, but I want to talk about him especially because he kind of gets a little more than the rest. What did we think of Caliber?
I thought he was definitely funnier than he was a serious plot point. Did you notice when they went to go next door, he was the slowest out the front door because he had to like maneuver his body for the swords. he finally learned how to get out of the door. No, I thought I don't know. He was definitely entertaining in a comedic way, but you know, he just kind of served as the sword.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I mean, out of the 4 characters that get introduced that he's one of the members of, he's definitely my favorite. And the way he's introduced, he came across to me as an antagonist. Like there was a sense of sinister intimidation and malevolence.
They think he's an evil alien at first. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cause he's standing across the street like that.
Just glowering at them. It looks so terrible.
And when he shows up at the school, the teachers report him.
Yes. I mean, it's great. I love what they do with him. And then also to find out that he is basically a sword, and that's why he carries a sword around and everything. And the way that each of these characters kind of reflects what their ability is, in their personality and in their demeanor and their stance, as we'll find out later, really makes it fascinating because everybody has more capability to more agency in the world. Every other one of those 4 characters, all 3 of the other characters, they have more ability to act on their own than him. He's like, he really can't do as much on his own. And it's really
I know what you're talking about in their forms. I think as a character, I actually really disagree with Jason on this one. I think he has so much that he brings to the story. First off, in this scene right here where they're searching for the missing kids, the dead kids, and the scene where he has the soda and there's the marble in it, right?
Yeah.
And he wants the marble out. And they're like, you can't get it out. And so he just slices open the bottle and he pulls the marble out. That's super important to the theme of this story for another character, not for Akane. It's actually for Yuta's twist. That marble is shown like 5 or 6 times throughout the anime, and it's in the intro as well. That marble is super important. He's also, the one who talks to Auntie and gets his phone number. Like, he's not just the warrior. He's probably more compassionate than all the other junior high school kids. I think he's bringing more to this anime than you realize because he appears so bland and expresses himself so blandly, but I think he's more aware of what's going on than anyone else and is more in tune with everyone else's feelings, I guess.
Actually, I think you're right, because there's that moment in the coffee shop where he's talking with another one of the Neon Genesis guys, and he goes, "Why didn't we chase Auntie? Like, why didn't we pursue him when he ran?"
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really, really interesting story beat for their these side characters.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because he is just the sword, but also when in human form, he seems to be the one talking to people and helping people. Like I said, there's a reason I singled him out where the other three we're going to talk about as a group.
I am curious as we get to discussing them as a group, what qualities maybe they embody. It'll be fun to think about as we discuss more of where they sit rather than trying to throw it all out there right now.
So basically, after all that, another kaiju appears. It attacks the teacher. This one looks like Godzilla with a laser, a metalish Godzilla with a laser beam cone on his front.
Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah. Except for he has really weird googly eyes.
Yes.
He has like 2 pink googly eyes.
He's got like a glass helm over half of his face. And he's got like these pink eyes that are completely wall-eyed off to the sides.
Yeah, and not like they're not symmetrical. They're off-centered with each other.
Actually, made another scene that was unsettling is when this thing sees its target. It does this whole like huh.
And the poor teacher. Come on. His expression was great when that happened.
Gridman shows up, starts to lose the fight. Is a different color this time because now that the computer's been repaired, a stronger Gridman can appear. And Caliber has to enter the computer and turn into Gridman's sword, which he uses to kill the kaiju. This is a format that this show will use for almost the rest of the thing. Monster shows up. I'm not strong enough. Okay, here's a person to jump into the computer, turn into a weapon, and make you strong enough to win. If you've seen a Power Rangers episode, you absolutely know how this goes. Which is fine, but it makes it like there's not much to talk about in the fight scenes. They're not even that long, and they're not, like I said, they're not tactical. They're not, how do we beat this guy? It's like, oh, let me just power up a little bit more, and then I will win this fight.
I have to admit, after watching the first fight and seeing just how much of the city they destroyed in their fight, I was wondering how they were going to deal with that. Like, how do you deal with the fallout from those battles? And
I love the reference because they do explain it in this, but there's also the idea of like, why didn't those other shows address this?
Yep.
Why did those cities get destroyed?
Yeah. And actually, one of my favorite like city destroying scenes is he's fighting one of them, and it does this thing and grabs an entire building and just kind of does this spin move and smashes the whole building on him. I'm like, okay, that was pretty good.
Talking about that was awesome. That character, that kaiju was awesome.
The next day, everything's back to normal again, except for the teacher bumps into Yuta and then apologizes, showing that he has had some character growth based on the events that he does not remember.
And Akane sees this.
This kind of factors into my whole, this is about depression, but just a little bit, and it'll be later. Then we get to meet Auntie, who is Jeremy's favorite character. So Auntie is a kaiju who's normally in child form. And one thing I loved about the dub, the smaller characters had deeper voices and like the bigger characters had lighter voices. Is that the same in the sub?
Yes. Yeah, he had a very deep voice.
Auntie has a deep voice, but he looks like just this little kid. Jeremy, why'd you like Auntie?
I think the reason I liked him so much was that he was created for one purpose, and he claimed that was all that mattered. And every time he's trying to reach that goal, it really does appear that that's all that mattered. Like, he has convinced himself that that's all that mattered. And yet, whenever things get in his way, he doesn't necessarily do undue harm to anything around him. When he could, he certainly has the power to. And so just seeing how his interactions with Akane and how his interactions with the other characters let him display more interesting full features to his character, and then also knowing that he is just a tool that was made for a job, makes him really interesting, multifaceted. I also loved his scenes where he was eating. They cracked me up every time. Like, this is how a monster eats, of course. just face down on the bowl, making terrible eating noises.
Yeah. What do you think of him, Jason?
I actually really, really loved how the anime treated him. And he's also another one of the few characters that has a decent amount of character growth in this anime. But like, so for instance, like, okay, I'm going to introduce this monster that can transform into, a human-looking middle schooler, and Rita comes up behind him and is like, when's the last time you took a bath? And he's like, bath? What's a bath? And I thought that was brilliant. It wasn't just a funny moment, but it was showing that, yeah, this monster literally knows nothing but I need to kill Gridman.
Yep.
Literally.
Yeah.
I can communicate and I need to kill Gridman. So actually that scene of Rika taking care of him kind of endeared you to the character. And also it softened him up a little bit too, which was nice. And so I actually really enjoyed his character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that if it wasn't Gridman, he wasn't like evil to people. He's literally like, I have to do this one thing. And the pain and punishment he's put through in his devotion to his cause, to his purpose, from Akane, who every time he fails, literally throws her cell phone into his face as hard as she can. And he just takes it.
And he's her hate incarnate, right? Because that's why he's so human.
Well, aren't all they?
Yeah,
all the kaiju?
Yeah.
Well, no, he's the only one that they mentioned that he specifically has a human emotion attached to it. The other ones are just. But so that's one thing we haven't mentioned. When Gridman defeats these kaiju, it's not guts and monster goo that comes out of them. There's circuitry and wires.
Yeah,
like they are robots. And this kid, even though he's a kaiju, none of the other kaiju can shrink down in then take on the form of a human. And I think the reason they said that he's able to do that is because he has such a deep emotion trapped in him from Akane, which is her hate for Gridman.
Which seems odd because Gridman just showed up, so it's strange that she would have such intense hatred for him for just showing up.
Well,
long term,
the way I explained it to my son when he started watching it with me was that she's trying to manipulate this world by bringing in kaiju to rid the things that she doesn't like, and Gridman 2 or 3 times. Well, okay, so the thing is, one offense can get a kaiju sicked on you. So if you're now Gridman that's stopping her manipulation of this world, yeah, that could build hate real fast.
Yeah. I also wonder, something just occurred to me about another reason that he might be human. We know that he has the ability to duplicate things that he observes in Gridman.
Right. He basically is evolving.
I wonder if without even realizing it, he duplicated the fact that Gridman is a human right now.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, that never even occurred to me until just now from what you were saying. Yeah. Huh.
I agree with everything you guys said about him having his character arc, his depth. I thought they were going one way with him, and they zigged instead of zagged. And I'm kind of wondering why they looked like they were going to set up the other way. Not that I have a problem with the way they went. And I love the symbology they used in his character arc. I love when he carried the girl through the forest, the hand in the umbrella, especially after he was told, why are you in the rain without an umbrella? There's just all these little moments he has, and that this show does so well. There's so much subtlety to everything that's going on. Like Jeremy said, of just laying in your bed listening to headphones, that they use also with Auntie, and that show this isn't just a kaiju anymore.
Well, and that's what's really great that I'm finding out the more I talk about this anime is that, yeah, we're watching a team of teenagers turn into, help a big robot save the day against kaiju on the surface. And yeah. I think we've already mentioned this, but like there is just a completely other story being told in every little minutia of these scenes. And I think the animators did a really, really great job, along with the storytellers, of putting these little tidbits in there, like the umbrella, or like, she gives him, Akane says, "You failed, so you don't get food." And then here comes Rika, and she feeds him, right? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
So back in the action, when Anti turns into his kaiju form, and I absolutely love his kaiju form,
one of the best ones.
Gridman fights him with his sword, but Yuta is unsure about killing him because
he's been
human. Specifically, this is the first kaiju that's talked back, and he's like, "Wait, does that mean these are alive? I thought I was destroying like crazy monster robot things," and so he holds back, and he ends up losing. The computer called Junk that Gridman's in shuts down, and then Rika and Utsume have to kind of figure out what's going on. They wait for a whole day. They're like, "We cannot find Yuta. We think he's dead." They try to confirm if he disappeared from existence like the others.
I think that Utsumi is responsible, if I remember correctly, for him even thinking that the kaiju could be human too.
Yeah, he mentioned it he was wondering out loud.
Yeah. So now, mark one for Utsumi.
But once Gridman disappears, Anti just completely loses interest in being a kaiju anymore. Just like, okay, I literally can only transform when Gridman's around.
Yeah. He has a rule built into him that he can't go kaiju until he sees Gridman, and he finds out later Gridman won't show up unless there's a kaiju. So he literally has to wait for other kaiju to attack to get to fulfill his function.
Plus, then he goes Vegeta, which I love.
Yes, he does. This is when the Neon Genesis Junior High School Club show up. And yes, that name is a reference that you're thinking, and I love it. Also, at some point, some other character goes, "That sounds like a beeping bad name." And because Jeremy had made a comment that, like, that's such a stupid name. If so, to have in the anime someone point out, that is such a stupid name. I was like, oh, okay, at least they're aware. These are the characters Max, Boar, and Vit. They are just like Caliber. They are functions of Gridman, or attachments for Gridman. What did you guys think of these three characters?
Which one's the little girl?
Little boy.
She's not little.
Little boy is Boar.
What?
Wait.
Yes.
That's a boy?
Honestly, until I read the wiki after finishing the anime, I thought it was a girl. The reason he has pigtails is because he is a drill, and so he has two pigtails. But and I'm pretty sure he's Boar is voiced by a girl, which doesn't help. But yes, Boar is a little, per the wiki, androgynous boy. And Max is the big tough guy with the metal mask face, and Vit is the blue-haired guy named after a fighter jet who turns into a fighter jet.
I liked them all. I thought Max and Boar were more interesting as far as just sprite characters. Vit was obviously the mature. Oh wait, no, Vit was the plane.
Vit is the plane, the blue-haired guy.
I liked Vit. I liked Vit a lot.
There's something cool about an apathetic character who's like, "You need to go help," and he's like, "Gotta finish my text."
Like, who is he even texting?
Right.
But my favorite character when these guys are introduced is actually Rika's mom, because not only does she take it in stride, but then she's just like later on, she's, "Don't you guys have something better to do, please?"
The scene where she near the end where she sees them jump into the computer and they turn and all look at her and she's like, "Go on,
don't mind me."
Which makes me question, like, how much does she really know?
Yeah. There's another scene that made me wonder that about her. The first time I wondered was when I saw her earring, which is an eyeball that looks just like her eyes, and the show never says anything about it. It's just weird. She has one earring. Normally, when in anime they draw characters, they go through character design. Something like that wouldn't just be like, let's give her one earring that's an eyeball. I bet it means something. I just don't know what it is. But there's the dream sequence, and in the dream sequence, she's got really, really hooded, shaded eyes, and it's just so creepy. As far as the other three members of the Neon Event, whatever.
Yep.
Yes. As far as them, I liked them. They were entertaining, but I think I really like the idea that they're one-dimensional, which they kind of are. Each one of them is very, very one-dimensional that way, because it lends itself well to them not even ever being anything that's supposed to be disconnected from Gridman. Like, they are essentially qualities of Gridman.
Yeah,
Never meant to be independent.
I'm kind of confused by that. Are they always separate people, or were they all one person and Gridman literally broke into these people?
I got the impression he broke into the people.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that too until the end, where they're still separate, and I was like, couldn't you have reformed? And they're still individual characters. So I was a little confused on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, they show up and they're like, well, have you called Yuta? And they're like, wait, what? And then they call Yuta on the cell phone. He's like, yeah, I don't know where I am, but I'm alive. And then Calibur's like, we're hiding. we're trying to get the kaiju to come out. And they basically make them jump out of the computer and they try again. Max this time fuses with Gridman and they beat up Anti and they win. But like, I do want to point out, Anti copies the abilities of whatever he gets attacked with. So every time they switch the attachment, Anti gets a new power.
Right.
Yeah.
And this fight kind of comes to a standstill, though. Anti just kind of runs out of strength and turns back into his human form, and Gridman does too.
Mm-hmm.
In the next episode, Akane is starting to get suspicious about Yuta and Gridman. She has her friend in school, and suddenly he has amnesia, and suddenly now a giant robot is showing up and battling kaiju. She's putting two together. This is where she meets up with Rika on the bus, and they kind of talk. And this episode actually was probably felt a little filler to me. They end up going on a date with a YouTube boy group.
Yeah, that was weird, but okay.
It's Rika's friends who want to go, and Akane, who is trying to get info out of Rika, suggests they all, she's like, oh, I'll go too. So they go on this group date. This is also where we learn that Yuta has a crush on Rika, so he's kind of freaking out that Rika's going on a date. Utsume has a crush on Akane, which has not been a secret, and so they go to stalk him. Stuff happens, I guess. Akane clearly is not enjoying herself, and every time she tries to get information out of Rika, the boys are like, let's do stuff, and she just eventually gives up.
Not only that. Apparently she hates it so much.
She basically goes and makes another kaiju that starts attacking the boy band one at a time. Rika, I've been playing Kingdom Hearts. Rika tries to warn the last member of the boy band, who's like, no, it's so cool. And then he gets attacked and he's like, why didn't I have my camera? Which was weird.
I don't think he said that in the sub. That's funny.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's like, he's got those tentacles around him, and he's just like, oh, this would have made great content for my show.
No, I don't remember that at all.
Caliber ends up saving them.
Yeah.
And then basically they form Gridman, and they had to fight this guy with wild, wacky, wiggly arm monster.
Yes.
Sorry. But again, I highly recommend Mother's Basement's video, because he doesn't really review this episode, so it's actually one of the ones I watched before him. But he talks about why they designed the monsters they did, and how like this could just be a guy with his arms. You can see where his arms would be in the tubes, because you can see where the tubes bend and where they don't bend. So even they animate like there's arms literally in those tubes, which is pretty cool, but it's a little silly looking too.
Yeah.
So they form Gridman, they attack it. Anti joins the fight. And so they use this is when all the members are like, let's all go and form up with Gridman. And basically they have slow internet speed.
I honestly thought, because I was streaming it from online, I'm like, hey, it did that. I was like, is the video going on? And then it switched camera angles and did it again. I was like, oh, that's funny.
Yeah, they and it's because the processing power of the computer is low. So they realize, okay, we can't go all at once. We can only go one at a time. So they send Max again, and Gridman uses him to win the fight. And Auntie runs out of power again before he can do anything. It's always happens to Auntie.
Yep.
And then the next episode is Jeremy's favorite episode.
Is this the beach episode?
We gotta go to the beach. It's an anime. Actually, what I saw as, oh my god, we're just gonna have another beach anime episode, turned out to be one of my favorite episodes because it is very odd. First, we see Akane in her swimsuit. We get a lot of Akane in her swimsuit. There is
Which I did not mind.
Yeah, there's no shortage in this episode. I'll say that.
Yeah, Rika too. Mm-hmm.
But Yuta and Utsume get on their train, and on the way they fall asleep. And I was like, wait, what? The mist starts coming in. They pass out, and then they wake up, and we're at the place we were supposed to go. And there's such a mystery going on. Yeah. I was just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Yep. They go rafting with their class. There's scenes of like, hey, put sunscreen on me. Utsume apparently is a little chubby in the tummy, and all the girls like sees him. That is harassment and body shaming.
Troy offended at the anime. No, actually, when Akane asked Rika to put some on her back, like that whole scene just felt uncomfortable. Yes. And I think it was totally meant to. And then she's like, do my friend. I'm just kidding, trying to make light of it. And you're like, no, something's odd's going here.
Yuta and Akane have a conversation while everyone else is playing in the water and stuff. And she's talking about how, like, yeah, I know I look like the most popular girl in school and everything seems easy for me, but I've been having a hard time lately. The things just don't seem to be going right for me. And then she, like, lets out, but you've been transforming, right? He's like, yeah. And he's like, wait, what? And she's like, nothing, bye. And she's like, oh, he's totes Gridman. So she figures out he's Gridman. So she lets her next kaiju attack, which is a mountain with a giant mouth. Basically.
One of my favorites, because of how I like that it was basically background animation brought to life. And they did a really good job with the animation for it, but just like how daunting this thing was, even for Gridman at full size. And then we find out he can't be full size in order to bring out his friends. And also, they're like, we're nowhere near junk. How do we get Gridman?
Right. Which is all kind of Akane's plan, is she wants to test out Gridman, see what he's capable of, and watch YouTube while this happens. So she's made her biggest kaiju ever, shooting fireballs into the mountains. And so the kids have to basically run back for their cell phones up the river that they rafted down. They do find a payphone instead. They call the shop. They tell the junior high school club kids, like, we need Gridman. So those guys buy it from mom, take it on a train with all these extra wires. There's a really important scene there, though, where Akane is walking through the woods and then comes up to the fire, and Auntie shows up and carries her through it, which I think is really important in his development and showing that humanity is starting to creep into him. He's starting to care about something that he shouldn't be caring about. And she points it out later, like, kaiju don't care about things. And I think this is where she notices, like, oh, this thing I made is not what I originally made it as.
Did anyone find it funny that Rika couldn't keep up with the other two?
Yeah.
And she's got a different body shape than some of the
other. she's a bit more hippie than the other girls.
And thigh. No.
Yes.
Yuta basically has to strike out on his own. He has to get past the fire. He falls down, but everything turns out all right. He does meet up with the group and they're able to get junk on, and he's able to turn into Gridman.
And then he has the big old stenching cord.
Yep. And then he has to fight this mountain thing and Auntie, because Auntie shows up. And with the help of Boar, who I love that they pointed. She's like, I got my 2 drills. And they're like, those are literally for show. They do nothing. And I thought that was hilarious because I thought for sure they were going to drill into the monster.
Yeah.
And then no, the drills turn into giant lasers. And shoot it. And also that they're like, just ignore Auntie. We don't need to deal with him.
Yeah.
Poor Auntie. He's trying so hard.
Yep.
But yeah, he fuses with Boar, and they're able to destroy this mountain thing. And then everyone gets back on the train, and exhausted, they all happen to fall asleep. I love that even Max, who's like, yeah, he must be tired. And then the last thing we see is his eyes close and the scene ends. And I was like, oh my God, he fell asleep too. Everyone's sleeping. Mm-hmm. And then it goes back and shows you that all that area we've spent this entire episode in, just floating in space in chunks.
Yeah, it's not like destroyed in a traditional sense. It's ripped apart, but then like just kind of ominously
left
in a void.
Yeah. So in our next episode, each of our 3 main teenage protagonists meet with a different character and kind of have their own interaction. So first off, we have Rika, who meets Auntie, and this is where she gives him a bath and treats him kindly. It's interesting that they mention that the kaiju stink, and is it just because they don't realize they have to bathe, or is kaiju come with a smell because
I have a feeling it's a combination of not bathing, not washing their clothes, and they're digging through trash for food.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think it was.
Utsume runs into Akane, who, they talk about kaiju and how much they love the genre, and then she tries to interrogate him and get information about Gridman, and he doesn't tell her, but for the purpose of not getting her involved because he likes her. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really perceive the threat that's directly in front of his face.
Yep.
But this is that scene where we see her, like she pulls away from her straw, and the straw is just mangled.
Completely destroyed.
Then the other part of the story, which is probably the most interesting, is Yuta and the little kaiju girl. He basically meets this little girl, and she's like, hey, I'm a kaiju. And he's like, what? And all of a sudden she grows huge. She's like, I'm a kaiju. He's like, okay, I believe you. And then she wants a date, and they go and they talk about this world, and she starts talking about, what about, have you noticed all the fog? It's not fog. And she takes him on back to the train station. They get on the train, and he falls asleep again. And she uses music to wake him up. This doesn't really make sense. And I do think it makes sense if you know Gridman lore. This is actually really heavily into Gridman lore, I think. I'm guessing. She wakes him up and explains to him, like, the world's not real, and it's all made by Akane. She destroys what she doesn't like with the kaiju, and then the gas spewing kaiju statues outside the mist come in and rebuild whatever she wants.
I love the animation for this particular, like it's so SimCity 2000, where like just these like stationary kaiju models going around and like shooting mist at buildings, and the buildings fixed.
Yep,
it's so great.
Any thoughts on the little kaiju girl?
I really, really, really was hoping there would be more of her. She seemed super interesting, and I wanted to know more about her.
If you know that, I do know her lore because I looked it up, and she is connected to the original Gridman show, but not specifically
because she didn't seem made by Akane.
She's not.
Okay, so it's like, how'd she get there?
She said she was here before this city. And
right, so what does that mean?
Yeah. This, for me, this was the reason why she was awesome. Because she means that this world is bigger, like this universe is bigger, and that fascinates me.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, so, she meant she was just so much lore packed into one character that we did not get enough time with.
Right. She is especially at the end, they reveal, she mentions her family in the very last episode, and you see a giant monster behind her. Mm-hmm. And if you are a fan of the original Gridman series, that was probably a huge moment for you, because that monster was a kaiju that Gridman fought, who was brain controlled, and Gridman freed him and saved him, and is a friend of Gridman.
Oh, no kidding!
goodness.
So the
That's
little
so
girl
cool.
is paying the favor forward.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. But again, you'd have to know Gridman. Otherwise, there's just a mysterious kaiju girl walking through this thing. So take it as you will. Again, none of us have seen Gridman.
Now,
That's
I will.
that was even that on its own was good enough for me. I love
Mm.
the character for it, but this makes it even better. Yeah.
What really attached me to her right at first though was when she did grow. Nothing about her changed.
Yeah.
Her clothes grew. She was still the same little girl, just enormous, and it looked like she was going to try and eat him. But that all the other kaiju, when they grow, they completely change form. They either become more robotic, or they get weird armor. And she didn't change at all, and I found that fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I want to make sure I got this right. So Akane tells Auntie to kill Yuta.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually at the beginning of this episode, and she's like, "Hey, this is Gridman. This kid, you need to kill him, and you'll stop Gridman." And he, at the end of this episode, after this whole thing with the kaiju girl, he does attack him, and Max and Caliber defend him, and they kind of basically shoo him away. And they're like, "This isn't Gridman. Look, this is a human. You're attacking him for no reason. If you want to fight Gridman, you'll never be able to fight him if you kill this kid, so you need to stop." And he kind of just like, okay, gives up and listens to them. And then everyone returns to the shop, and we get Yuta telling everyone what happened, and the others don't believe him. He's like, Akane is God. She's making this world, and they're like, no, that's insane.
This felt a little out of place. That they would completely write him off. Maybe some doubt, or maybe some
with how crazy everything's been.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I can now see Kaiju Beyond the Mist. I'm watching my world get destroyed and rebuilt nearly every day, but now this crossed a line. I don't know. I didn't like this scene.
I have one potential solution to this, and that is Akane having made everybody in this city love her. And so you can't possibly convince them she's the culprit unless they see it for themselves and it's indisputable. That's the only solution I could see.
There's also the fact he's like, I got on the train and there's nothing outside the city. And they're like, we were literally just outside the city the other day. I'm sure that doesn't help.
And also they go, Akane doesn't know anything about kaiju, and Utsume doesn't say anything. Which I found kind of odd, because yeah, he's attached to her in a romantic sense, but like he has no loyalty to her. So yeah, I think that leads more credence to Jeremy's
absolutely
theory.
Right. So let's double down on Akane again. Now that the cat's out of the bag, that she is the god of this world. Literally everything here is of her design. And I want to touch on the fact that this is about depression. She is a girl from another world, we find out, who is having a hard time there and has retreated into this fake world completely of her making. And I see this theme of, at first it's superficial, but eventually this all leads to tearing everything down that she built. And everything is designed to love her, and yet they don't all love her. She's not best friends with Rika. Yuta has a crush on someone else. And anytime anything goes wrong, she quickly destroys it. And I just see this as this weird way to examine depression and how you self-destruct and tear down your own world. And if everything in this world is an aspect of her, she's literally just destroying herself every time she unleashes a kaiju. And Gridman, the thing that's saving her, and remember that teacher, thanks to Gridman, actually could get better. She could make the world better, but instead she just destroys it. Thoughts?
I like that a lot. It's interesting that because in that framework, she's definitely self-destructive. I think the only thing that doesn't fit is, or at least has a hard time fitting, is Alexis. Like, if she's supposed to be the ultimate being in this world, why can't Alexis exert any control over her? And then that leads credence to, well, what is this world really? And does she just have special powers here? She's not an ultimate being. She's just afforded special powers.
Oh yeah, she's totally just a regular person that this super magical being has brought her in and said, "Hey, I'll let you be the god of this world. Make it however you want, and I will channel this unlimited power through you." And then how she does that, she makes what she thinks is the perfect world, and then slowly self-destructs it, because
That's not the impression I got.
Even in let me finish. Even in a world that is perfect, she hates herself. She hates this world.
So the impression I got is the only power he afforded her was the giving life to the kaiju. She seems to have other powers. In fact, in the final scenes, she seems to have a power after Alexis is gone.
Yeah, that's true. Because she can disappear.
The world is connected to her. Like the thing is, I don't fully understand what the world is. In Gridman, it's a computer world, but also you could convince me this is literally the anime is the world. Like
that's what I was thinking.
Or is it just a figment of her, like a dream? Because even Gridman mentions there's still one person we need to wake up. Is she just in a dream world? But the reason this is all happening is because Alexis chose her, pushed her into this.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
She's just a human. She's just a regular person.
Okay. I don't agree. I can see where you're coming from, but one of the things that makes me doubt it is that we only see him ever use his power when he becomes a kaiju himself and when he gives life to her models. Those are the only two moments that I've ever seen him use or exert any other sort of power amongst the world.
Okay.
So in the very last scene on her dresser is the pass card thing that she gets from Rika.
Mm-hmm.
So she had the power to bring it out. Plus, there's points in quite a few of the episodes where she literally vanishes and the characters are looking for her because she disappeared so abruptly. And I don't think that Alexis necessarily did that. At least I'm not convinced he did.
When she falls off the crane,
she lands on her feet just
head first, almost hits the ground. I thought she was committing suicide.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling she wanted to.
Uh-huh.
She flips to her feet. Like
it was no trouble at all.
Yeah.
So in my theory, the world is what makes her omnipotent, not that she is omnipotent.
That's fair.
What I got from it was that she essentially is her own power, and maybe she was brought to this world by Alexis, but here she's not like the people in it.
I agree.
Yeah, okay, because I thought that's what you meant when you said that she's human just like everyone else is human. I think that would apply to the humans that aren't in this world. But the humans in this world, I think, are constructs, fabrications that she can modify.
When I say she's human, I mean like you and me.
Like us. Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. But in this world, and I don't know, this could be the world's property, not necessarily Alexis' property. Or it could be Alexis. I have no idea. I didn't get the impression it was Alexis. But yeah, she's a fascinating character because, like you say, she's essentially trying to create the perfect place to alleviate her depression, and yet finding that sometimes with depression, it is chemical, and it doesn't matter how great the place is, you'll find reasons to hate it. And so you can imagine if initially she comes in and she's irritated at legitimate things, but then you look back at all of the kaiju that she's made on her shelves, she's been here a long time. And maybe she's finished cleaning up all the legitimate reasons, and now she's just picking on every little tiny thing because anything can upset her. And eventually that turns you into an antagonist. It turns you into a monster. And so I really, really like what they did with this character. I still see it as kind of like, I her and Alexis are two powers vying for control of this environment, but he's definitely the dominant power. But it's still just confusing enough that it's fun to think about.
Okay. Let's say we got more. We'll keep going.
I'm good.
Okay. So Auntie attacks Yuta at school, which is where he reveals, like, I can't turn into Gridman without a kaiju to, turn into fight.
Auntie attacks him in human form, and like Yuta just starts. He sees him and just books it. He's like, "Oh my god, I gotta go."
Yep.
This is pretty funny scene.
And what's funny is Akane, like, he goes to Akane and is like, "Hey, you need to make a kaiju so I can fight him." And she's like, "I'm done with you. Get away from me. Like, you don't serve a purpose anymore. You're done." And really, and calls him an idiot. Probably, I think, hits him with the phone again. Then Akane goes to Yuta's room. So Yuta comes into his room, and I'd like to point out the marbles in this scene. And she tries to seduce him into teaming up with her. And then they go and get food as he walks her home. And then Alexis joins them, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, this was such a surreal moment in this anime, because it's like, hi, I'm the villain, you're the hero. Would you like to talk this about what's going on?" And how, because the way they fight has to do with Gridman and the kaiju. There's no, I'm going to punch you and you're going to punch me back. And, we can sit down and talk about this. And it's such a weird relationship between protagonist and antagonist that's something I haven't seen before.
Yeah, it also felt a little sinister that she would take him to a place that he knew she had murdered somebody from this place.
Yep.
Like,
yep.
And then here comes this alien creature that apparently the shop owner can't see. And yeah, it's like it almost felt like intimidation tactics, but they're constantly reassuring him, "Oh no, just eat, it's fine." And there was so much focus on this spoon of like rice, and like it made me hungry looking at this thing, by the way. But yeah, he's like, "Is this poison? Are they trying to hurt me?"
A UFO appears above the city, and Yuta runs off to fight it as Gridman, but Akane's like, "I didn't make a kaiju. What's going on?" And Alexis is like, "Oh, I found Auntie and I had him make a kaiju. Isn't it cool?" And basically what this is, what he first sees and turns into Gridman and fights, is a UFO that easy to destroy. Then it comes back. And easy to destroy, and then it comes back. And he has to fuse with Vit, who's the jet fighter, so he becomes a flying Gridman. And it's a kaiju in the sky controlling like puppets, UFOs. And Auntie's up there, who now has the ability to also fly. And they have a really cool sky battle, but the sky battle hits the ceiling, and there's a ceiling.
Yeah. This was also the first scene where Alexis did something without Akane's knowledge, especially something that usually he's been teaming up with her to do. So this is like their first moment of them having conflict between themselves, and come to find out that, maybe they're not on the same page. As far as like, villain team, if you will. But yeah, this moment where they bust through the clouds and there is like circuit board city above them, I was like, oh, we're not watching a kaiju show.
So they win the fight pretty easily once they know where everything is. And I actually really liked how Vit was able to like re-separate out and separate the fight, and then they came back together and caught them. That was pretty cool. And then Alexis punishes Auntie and cuts his eye out.
Not out, just cuts his face.
Yeah, apparently in anime, if you get sliced in the eye, your eye's fine. I get it. Twice in a row.
2 anime in a row.
This is what confused me. I thought like, oh, he's trying to push Auntie's hate even farther, and it doesn't really have that effect. Is that what you guys thought he was doing here? Like, just make him madder so that he'd make more kaiju, but he never makes another kaiju after this.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what his goal here was, or if it was just because he said, "I'm going to go punish him," and I assumed that meant he was going to go kill him. But then
That's what Akane assumed.
right, and then he just hurts him. So I was like, "Oh, okay, punishment over, I guess." And then I dropped it like mentally.
This is when I wasn't sure about who was subordinate to who, and so I kind of thought that Alexis might be subordinate to Akane. And so I thought maybe he was just performing the technicality of punishment without actually carrying forward the spirit of it. But later, I think you might be right, Troy, or it could just be that Alexis was, don't throw it away yet. It might still be interesting.
And if negative emotion is what he's interested in,
yeah,
he might, like you said, he just might be like, let's just see where this goes. This guy's so full of hate. I'm not going to let this go to waste.
Exactly.
Okay, the next episode, Akane is like, hey, I'm making it. She makes new kaiju, but she tells Alexis, let's not make it yet. And she goes and she tells the Gridman Alliance, hey, guys, in a week, I'm going to let this kaiju, she holds it up, I'm going to destroy the school festival with it. They had canceled the school festival before, but it's finally back, which is odd because, again, this is her world of her design that she doesn't like school festivals. And
actually, there was like 5 or 6 years in between the last one.
Yeah, they don't do this, and then people are. She's also losing control of this world. That is an important aspect. Like there's bugs in the machine that she can't seem to iron out.
It all started with Gridman.
It started with Yuta.
I think it started with Yuta, but she could have easily corrected Yuta.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So they have an argument. This is where Rika's like, hey, we should talk to her. She's my friend. I can talk to her. And the others are like, no, we can fight her. We should fight her. They come up with a plan. Like, if we shrink Gridman just a little bit, we can get all the attachments on him at once. We can get, the computer can handle the lesser processing power, and then we'll have a full powered Gridman, which by the way is the name of Gridman with all his attachments, full power Gridman.
Well, that's his real name.
Way to keep it simple.
So there's also a scene of Auntie coming to the junk shop. And I love this scene because he basically passes out from hunger and the mom feeds him. And then when he's leaving, Calibur's like, hey, give me your phone number. And kind of makes that attachment. And the rest of the guys are like, why are we talking to him? Why are we not kicking his butt? Isn't that the bad guy? And then Akane tells Rika, you like me because I made you like me. They're on the bus, and she's like, why do you think you want to be my friend? Because I told you to. Which is interesting that she's not the best friend, though. Again, it's hard to know if this entire world is a reflection of Akane, which, like I said, I think it is. Why is Rika not her best friend? Why does that end credits scene not what was actually their relationship?
I wonder if that's so. Once we get into it, I wonder if the ending credits is what she intended to happen, and it just ended up not.
Or maybe an earlier version.
Oh, never even thought about that.
Anyway, they do eventually come up with a plan that Gridman appears at the festival before the kaiju, making everyone evacuate. So when the kaiju does show up, they're able to make the full power Gridman with all the attachments, and they take him out pretty easily.
I love watching him tiptoe around all the little stands and stuff.
And then our next episode, we see a giant kaiju just literally standing in the middle of the city, doing nothing. And then Yuta wakes up on Akane's couch in her junk shop, and his memories are gone. And she's like, hey, we just found you. I say, basically, episode 1 repeats, but Rika is replaced with Akane. then we also see Rika meeting Akane and them becoming friends, and we also see Utsume meeting Akane and them bonding over kaiju and becoming really close. And we see all three of these things at the same time. I loved the imagery of the flash of the setting sun on the billboard, and in if you very cut in there is Gridman's face on the billboard, and then it's back to just a phone number. This was a really cool episode.
Yeah, I actually really so they would have a really nice conversation scene, and then it would go to the train signal, ding 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 ding.
Yeah.
Then it would cut to the another whole like really nice ding ding ding, and it was like so unsettling. It was like it kind of pulled you out of it every time because it was really weird to go. I'm watching the first episode, but it's Akane. And Rika's mom is super creepy.
Yeah, and now Rika's Akane's mom. It's also like it's pretty clear that Akane has set this up, but it took me a minute to realize these are three separate realities, not
right.
Because I was like, man, she's busy running back and forth and keeping these three separate. But no, there's three separate realities. Basically, the giant kaiju from before, who that's just standing in the city not doing anything, is forcing them into a dream world where Akane is their best friend.
Oh, I didn't get the impression this was one of those. I got the impression this was a new one that she made that was for this purpose.
No, it's the kaiju specifically that's causing this.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like what you were saying just now was that it was one of the Guardian kaiju that was there before.
Oh, no. The kaiju it's a new kaiju.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
It looks like a brontosaurus with dragonfly wings, kind of.
I loved so each of them discovers it's a dream world on their own. Utsume's is the funniest because not only is he like, this is not just too good to be true, but way too good to be true. And then she like basically offers some inappropriate services to him. And he still is like, okay, now you've convinced me. I'm dreaming.
This can't be real.
Yeah, he's like, okay, no, not someone that looks like you.
Yep. I'm going to wake up now. I don't want to humiliate myself.
I absolutely love the quote that Yuta repeats multiple times throughout the anime, but he uses it here, especially to break out of the dream, is there's something only I can do, something I must do. I really liked how that was his motto, right? That kept him going. That even when he doubted everything around him, he's like, no, this is the one truth I can hold on to move forward and help him get out of that dream.
Actually, it was pretty heartbreaking to have that cut of them walking with the sun going down and Yuta starting to bring his hand close to hers. And then it cuts to her with Alexis behind her. They're on top of this
in the real
crane. They're on top of this crane and it's raining. And she mentions this is how it was supposed to be. And it's like that was the first time I was like, oh, maybe she's not so bad, even though she's murdered lots of people.
Yeah, she's terrible.
She's literally being rejected by her perfect world,
right?
Well, and like, but where is she taking him? Did you notice where they were?
I love.
She took him to the cemetery, and Takanawa, the volleyball girl's grave,
to her grave.
Mm-hmm.
Like the undertones are still there of how vicious she is. Like there's a couple of points where characters say you have no idea how twisted Akane is, and it's scenes like this where I'm reminded they're right. She is screwed up in the head. Like she takes pleasure in rubbing the pain in.
See, I saw it as self-destructive. Like she's literally giving him this big sign of this is a dream because she doesn't like herself.
It's true. Like a person can get to that point and then they just really it's complete nihilism. Like there's no reason to do anything. Just they're going to end it basically. And that's what she proceeds to do at the end of this episode is take a nosedive off the top of that tower that she was on. Right. And so that certainly lends credence to that idea, but it's like, you know, that is twisted. That is chemically twisted. There is something wrong mentally to go down that path.
Yes.
This felt very users inside the Matrix rejecting the Matrix. Because you have this near perfect scenario and the person that's being targeted rejects it, even though it's so good. Except for Yuta, where she goes, "Oh, I love taking strolls through the cemetery." I laughed out loud so hard. I'm like, that is so weird and creepy.
Well, especially because she probably put most of those people in there. I mean, there's a point in the last episode or so where like she starts to see the faces of all the people that she's killed that we know about. Like, how many do we not know about?
Basically, while they defeat the monster in the dream world with Gridman, the Neon Genesis Junior High School Club fuses into a non-Gridman robot and kills the monster, which I thought was really cool.
So Power Rangers stuff. Like, it was so like when the suit turns into a warrior without the warrior, I was like, this is perfect.
I was irritated so bad with this scene because one, why do you need Gridman anymore? Two, like if the suit can become a thing, why don't they stay that way all the time? And now there's two fighting. Like, this upset me so much.
So I
pulled me out of the storytelling so hard
because Auntie shows up and he calls them, which they can answer their phone in their robot form, and he's like, "Where's Gridman?" They're like, "Dude, Gridman's not gonna fight you. You're not a freaking kaiju." And he gets really depressed about that.
You've taken away my reason to live.
He literally states that multiple times. My only reason to exist.
Yeah.
So Akane kind of basically falls into a depression, and she's making really bad kaiju. She's not putting effort in. Alexis is like, "Hey, girl, keep working." She's like, "Yeah, why? Who cares?" Yuta decides, "Look, guys, we need to talk to Akane. We need to figure this out." And that's when they all go next door. But she's not there. They open the door and it's literally just more of the digital stuff.
Yeah. Because she recently moved it.
She relocated her room. Yep.
Yeah.
And then she misses a week of school. There's no kaiju. They're all wondering what to do. And Utsume, he starts going through something here, and I'm not quite sure what he's going through, but like he misses the meeting with the Alliance. And then Yuta checks on him. He's like, "Oh, I'm studying for my test. I got to keep going with my test." And I don't know if I believed him or not. If I do believe him, it makes sense that, look, I accept that I'm not super real, but I'm real to me, so I've got to keep existing. Or is he actually freaking out? Oh my God, I don't actually exist.
I think he's having a bit of an existential crisis about the idea that if they finally beat Akane and she doesn't exist anymore, does he exist anymore?
Yeah,
because he
that's what I'm wondering.
Really early, and I think I wonder if that's really, really bugging him. And this is like a coping method.
And his notes, guys, one of the best references and something that just shook me to my core. In his notebook, on his study notes, he wrote, "God's in his heaven, all's right with the world." This is both a reference to Genesis Evangelion, which is the logo of Nerve, the people who make the Evas and fight the angels. That is their motto, because with the idea that if God's messing with Earth, things aren't okay, right? If God's up in heaven and not messing with us, things must be okay. And then taking it into this anime where God literally sits next to you in the desk, what's going on with the world? That was such a cool quote. And it's like, he's got all these regular notes and then just in English printed. And of course he would know that quote, right? He would know the Evangelion series if it exists. He knows about the Ultraman series. Man, that I stopped the episode right there and like wrote it down. I was like, that's so cool.
See, and that's where I'm still a little bit confused about where Akane really comes from, because in the end sequence for their world, they turn into Earth, not her. Like, she turns into real Earth, but they turn into anime Earth. And like, there's potential for this being an origin story, like we just witnessed the Big Bang kind of thing, right? And I don't know exactly what they're trying to say about where she comes from, where they come from. It's
because the entire planet before the fixer beam,
yeah,
which we'll get into later. It's an entire planet of circuit board circuitry.
Yep. There's nothing there. Not humans, at least. Yeah.
Anyway, she eventually does make another kaiju, and it's just the most pathetic looking thing you've ever seen.
It's my favorite kaiju because, like, this represented her. If all the other kaiju were representing her, this one does such a good job of showing what has happened to her psyche, of how she's not coping with the situation as it is right now. She is just a complete mess. And this thing is an asymmetrical, the head is just kind of sticking out of a spine-shaped neck that just keeps going past it to the side. And it's wailing like it's in agony the entire time. Like, it doesn't even sound like the thing is roaring a challenge. It's in pain. This was so well done.
Yeah, this looks like you took a model of Godzilla off the shelf at a toy store and then stuck it in your oven for 30 minutes. It's just misshapen. It's pretty brilliant.
And it's so weak, too.
It took one hit.
Yeah, full power Gridman shows up and beats it in one hit.
Yeah.
And then we get a scene of Auntie asking Akane about himself. And she basically tells him, you're not a kaiju anymore. And this is what he brings her the umbrella, which is interesting because an episode ago, he was yelled at for why would you be in the rain without an umbrella? So he brings her an umbrella. And this is where she points out, you're not a kaiju. Kaiju don't do that. Kaiju don't feel things.
Mm-hmm. And the eyes. When she says, you don't have the eyes of a kaiju. And he says, your eyes are. And she says, stop. Don't look at my eyes. And I was like, oh, is she a kaiju? What's going on? I don't understand.
Then another kaiju appears out of the last one. It is sharp and pointy.
Looks like a banana with legs and arms.
Yeah,
I thought it looked like an oyster with like sharp edges.
An oyster banana.
This kaiju does something very important, though. Not only is it powerful enough to beat Gridman, which it does in a moment.
It's fast.
It runs around and kills all the poison spewing reconstruction kaiju.
Right.
Which again, in my theory of self-destruction, and they even call this out, this kaiju is her heart. Mm-hmm. She is literally taking away the ability to fix her world. She's spiraling into a further self-destructiveness.
She gave up.
Yeah, and there's no more going back. There's no, in the next day, people will remember. Gridman does try to fight it. It literally rips the attachments off of him and throws them back out of junk so that they show up in the shop. Mm-hmm. And then Auntie shows up. And Auntie has helped in a fight before, but only because he didn't want the kaiju to win and kill Gridman when it was his job. This time he actually saves Gridman. He says it's very much the similar thing, but he sacrifices himself literally to help Gridman. He takes the blunt of an attack. And he transforms into a new Gridman. His form matches Gridman's, and he gets Gridman's power set. And then he's able to beat the monster because he's Grid Knight, and he can detect the heart, and there's like multiple ones running around, so he's able to figure out which one's really Akane's heart because he's connected to it, and he kills it.
You know why? He's part of Akane as well. He's Akane's anger transformed now at this point, and because he knows her, he can read her moves.
Mm. Yep, and he's able to kill her. And
then that's one thing that Max complained about during the fight when he was still attached, is that I can't keep up with her. I can't keep up with this kaiju. I can't read its moves.
Right. Yeah. While this all happened, Akane had seen the Gridman Alliance go into the shop and use junk. So after the fight, she comes in and she stabs Yuta with her.
I wasn't expecting this
blade.
At all.
What is that? What is that tool?
It's a box cutter.
Yeah, a big box cutter, and she stabs him, and then right afterwards destroys junk in front of everyone, and then just walks out.
Yep, I absolutely.
Nobody tries to stop her.
Yeah, because how do you stop God, right?
It's God, yeah.
I loved it because all of the time since like episode 2, we have seen her use that razor blade to create her kaiju, and her kaiju go around killing, right? And so the razor blade, through proxy of kaiju, kills, and they kept showing the razor blade, and I just kept thinking that's going to be a weapon. She's going to kill somebody with that. And so when she finally did that, and like Yuta comes up to her, and he does that traditional move where you're like, oh, he just got stabbed. He just got stabbed. Oh yeah, this is. Yeah, I was so glad they did that. They committed, and
one of the most irritating things about this scene, though,
it's good.
He's lying there, blood starting to pool out from underneath him, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, call 911!" And of course, she's cut off. Like either the damage to the city has cut off communications, or she has cut off communications to everybody. Mom comes out, and she's just like, "What?"
For the record, it's her, because even the mail has been shut down. She literally doesn't want to talk to anybody.
Right.
It was the custodian, the death of the custodian kaiju. Shut down the internet, shut down the phones. They said it was the custodian kaiju.
Okay. But I'm like, they're like, what are we gonna do? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe flip him over and try and stop the bleeding. It's just like they're just watching him bleed out. And I'm like, you don't need to be a doctor to like put like maybe some fabric on there.
Okay, but this is where the intro changed. First of all, Auntie's scene in the intro, he's now Grid Knight instead of his kaiju form, and now the knife that has been shown in every intro is bloody.
Yeah,
that's so cool. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. But the scene was just like so irritating.
I kept expecting him to immediately get sucked into the computer and fixed. I'm like, okay, how are they going to fix this? He's got to become Gridman immediately, like before he bleeds out. So I was kind of glad they didn't do that, but it was still kind of weird because she stabbed him in the chest. Now, of course, she missed the vitals. She missed the vitals, guys.
Well, okay, so let's think about it. You're talking about a box cutter that's got perforated edges meant for breaking. She didn't get him above the ribcage. There's just no way. She's shorter than he is as well.
Yeah, but
anyway, yeah. This is actually, but this is symbolical, and this ties into the marble very, very much so, which I'll explain in a moment. But first, so they rush him. They drive him to the hospital. The world doesn't reset that morning. Rika goes searching out for Akane, but instead talks with her friends about the kaiju attack. Alexis is like, "Hey, Akane, let's make more kaiju," and she's like, "No, I'm done." So he brings back all the old models instead. He's like, screw it. I got all this stuff to work with. Why would I bother?
Don't need it anymore.
Auntie goes to the hospital and basically tells them all like, "Yeah, I know Gridman can't work, but why are you guys giving up?" And he's like, "I'll do it." There's also a fight between him and Itsumi. There's a lot of funny scenes like, who's this kid? Why is this kid here?
Yeah.
But I do want to rewind just for a second with Auntie. Before he becomes Grid Knight, there's a scene where he gets beat by Gridman, and he screams at Gridman, "Why don't you finish me off?"
Right.
He's in such a tortured state, and I think that definitely drove him into this team switch.
Yeah.
Anyway, they tell him he's now Grid Knight, and he decides to go fight the kaiju by himself.
I love how easily he's just like, "All right," he's like, "Yeah, that's my name now."
I also thought it was really funny how their first response to him was, "No, we don't trust you enough to give you our help." And in my mind, of course, I'm seeing all of Gridman's awesome gear on Auntie now, and I'm like, that's where they're going with this. This is going to be so cool. He's going to be like the Black Power Ranger version of the Red Power Ranger or whatever.
I thought Auntie was going to become the ultimate gear, and you don't need all of them to show up at once. You have Auntie who can now replicate all of them, but no, they went. But I did like the Grid Knight idea better. basically the junior high school club guys realize Yuta and Junk are connected, and we need to fix Junk if we want to help Yuta, because even though he's now stable, he's not waking up. So they get Mom, and they go back, and they upgrade Junk, which, I really like to see. Again, the Mom being like, I'm not sure what's going on, but I know more than you think I know, and I'm cool with it.
I like how they found a GPU in the trash.
Yeah. Did they install that? Because I thought they said that they were holding the GPU for later, but not installing it now.
I thought they installed it.
Yeah, I think they were unsure if it would work, so they were like, well, let's install it, see if it does.
I thought that's why they don't need to shrink to go to full power Gridman.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I don't know why, but for some reason I missed that. I must have been like taking a bite from my bowl.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple times, so I get that. Okay, so the whole marble analogy comes home as Yuta is inside himself, and he sees himself, Gridman, in the mirror, and Gridman's like, Yuta, dude, you've been Gridman this whole time. Yuta hasn't been here. Yuta's asleep. You're a Gridman. You literally took over a little kid's body.
Good job.
What that signifies with the marble represents obviously Gridman. The bottle represents being trapped inside Yuta. How did they get the marble out? You had to break the bottle. So when he got stabbed, it broke the bottle, letting the marble out.
That's good. Okay. The box cutter instead of the
samurai sword.
Samurai sword.
And which explains Yuta's obsession with the marble. Of how do I get the marble? Okay. So
that is
when he wakes up, he tells Utsume this, and Utsume's pissed. Like, you just took over my friend and you got him stabbed. You dick move.
Right.
And yet later he's like, when you come back, please take over my body.
Yeah, that was actually that tracked. I like that.
Yeah.
So Yuta and the rest form Ultimate Gridman, and they all get armbands now.
Special bands that connect their mind and their heart. So it is mind and connected.
Well, the only way to truly defeat enemies is feelings.
To connect to your feelings.
You guys could feel it, right? Like the feelings are coming.
I was so pissed. So pissed when Troy said, "Yeah, it's gonna be feelings." So I was like, "You son of a."
Yep. We're going to have a fixing beam at the end of this.
Bring that up at the time. Gridman and Grid Knight managed to defeat all the remaining kaiju. And then Rika finds Akane and talks to her, but Alexis actually interrupts them and forces Akane to become a kaiju.
Turn, I didn't see this coming.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I kind of did because I was wondering, is she a kaiju? But then we find out, no, she's just trapped inside one.
Well, if a kaiju can become a human, can a human become a kaiju?
Well, I mean, Alexi does say a human that makes monsters is a monster themselves, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
So Gridman and Grid Knight separate. He's like, Grid Knight, you fight this new giant monster. I got something to do, So we get two quick stories. So first we have Auntie, who fights this monster, and he turns into human form and goes inside and pulls Akane out of the kaiju, saving her, and then getting himself stabbed by Alexis.
Oh, my heart dropped so hard.
That was a good, I didn't see that coming.
Well, and also because she looks up at him and she calls him her failure at that point, but for the first time she has a smile when she says it.
Right.
And then he gets stabbed. And it's like, oh man, this was a huge character arc moment for both her and him. And then death. And that's perfect. That's what I want when I want to see consequence come and a character actually suffer and be taken out of the script. That's the moment. That's perfect.
So Gridman, who is now people are like Yuta, he's like, I'm actually Gridman. You don't have to call me Yuta no more. He goes riding Vit and gets Rika, and then he goes and gets Utsume. Rika is cool with it. Utsume is more upset, but then Rika yells at him, and power of friendship. You need to help.
I do think that he's got an interesting reason to be irritated. Like his statement, Yuta isn't even Yuta. And you own the machine. Your family owns it. What am I even here for? I can do nothing. I can't contribute in any way. I haven't been helpful at all. And she's like, no, you're here as moral support.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, I probably have thought more about that than almost anything I examined, because I'm like, what were they trying to say with that? Because he never served a real purpose. They're like, you do have a purpose, so what purpose do they consider him to have other than just caring is enough?
Yeah, it's kind of like when Gridman at the end says, having good friends is very important.
Okay, so that's Alexis absorbs Akane, and he becomes basically kaiju sized, and Gridman and the Gridman Alliance all use their powers to form True Gridman, which is literally looks exactly like the old show. And even Alexis is like, that's a little retro.
And Auntie happens to be pulled into that as well, because he has a wrist thing too.
Yes, that's right. He is part of it.
And him doing his flash, like, oh gosh, like he's bleeding on the ground on his back.
Yo. So did you guys notice in the first episode when Akane looked up at the sky and the sparkle burst? Did you see how many there were?
I didn't.
There's 6. 5 of them are bright and 1 is very, very dull.
So you think Auntie was a piece of Gridman the whole time?
Yep, and I think that's why he's got the blue eye at the end. I can't figure out who else the 6th one could be, because Akane's already there, and it's definitely not Rika or Utsumi, and it's not Yuta.
So we got the Ford Neon Genesis, we have Yuta,
and then we have the very dull one.
Maybe it could be Junk himself.
It could be,
because there is a guy in Junk who's talking as Gridman, right? So there's something about Gridman's in there, but that could just be Junk's function. So I actually prefer the idea it's Auntie.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think the wrist thing is what convinces me it's Auntie, because he shouldn't be able to join with Gridman unless he's part of Gridman.
Yep. So then we get our final battle, which is basically, hey, I'm more powerful than you. Yeah, but I'm immortal. Nothing you do matters. I'm just going to walk away and leave. And then he basically, Alexis beats Gridman. Gridman realizes he has the power to fix things, and he uses his, what is it called? Fixer beam. Now, that is a Gridman power from the Gridman show. He has the ability to fix anything that was destroyed. He could rebuild with a fixer beam. So that's lore. That is canon.
And that's because it's a digital world that he exhibits, right?
Oh, well, that would make sense in that universe. Yeah.
I do think this is...
You think it's a computer world?
I do, just because of the wiring of the ceiling matches what is the layout of the original Gridman show. That same blue-green wiring design is also used in the original Gridman show. In the original Gridman show, he was fighting kaiju in the web or in cyberspace.
So in the wiki for the original Gridman, it specifically says a beam from his chest that repairs damaged computer systems. So
they must be in a computer system. So he's right in there fighting alongside Bob the Guardian.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. That idea crossed my mind for sure. And he basically, what really happens is the fixer beam reaches Akane, who then has to make a choice. She's locked behind a door, and all the characters tell her, she's like, I can't. I'm the worst. I made this world and I destroyed this world. I don't deserve to be in this world. And they're like, yeah, but you don't need to count on yourself. You can count on us. Let us carry you. Let us help with you. And that's when an entire world forms out of that, which to me tells me the world became self-sufficient and didn't need Akane to control it.
I would think that has to be something Akane has to okay. It's almost like she was acting as a governor or as like a restriction on it, a stricture. And then she just kind of relaxed and stopped being so OCD about the world, maybe, and let it grow. I don't know.
It's just everyone saying like, let us do it. Let us, you don't have to be the one doing this. Put it on us. And then when she goes through the door, accepts that, that's when an entire world forms.
See, so this is where I run into the questions of where did the world come from? Was the world a fabrication of Akane? Is it her? Because I know that's some of the things that we were saying in the beginning was maybe the world is something she created. If it's something that she created, then what happens when she leaves? Is Utsumi right? Do they just disappear when she wakes up?
No, because we see them continue after she leaves.
Okay, so I think I lean more towards the possibility that she didn't make this world.
Hold on. We see them continue after she disappears, but we don't see them after the final scenes of the show.
But again, like, where did that little pocket thing that she got from Rika, how did it get to the real world? Like, that's the part that really gets me. It's
is this like a 13th floor kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. If this is just a story, there's no way that could get out. Like, if this was just a dream. So there has to be some element of reality to it.
Okay. So my theory is that whether this is cyberspace, a dream, an anime world that she got control of, the world itself was already there, at least the basic structure, that blue and white, green basis. And then when she comes in there, she can turn that into whatever she wants. And she made this city. And now she has full 100% godlike control over that. But she has to use the kaiju to do it. She can't literally point at a building and make a building come and go. She has to use the kaiju.
How did she relocate her room then?
I mean, there's no reason that kaiju couldn't have done that the night before. The rebuilder kaiju.
There was, but that was already done. I guess nobody checked it since the last time that things
were.
I guess.
And I think the fact that at this moment, going through the door, when the whole world forms, when it's no longer just a city, she's literally turning over the control to the world itself, and then this whole world forms. So now there is a cyber Earth, a whole new reality that forms from this moment that will continue to run independently, that no longer needs her. My interpretation, you're absolutely right. From the moment we see the wake up, there's no confirmation that's true. It's just based on the fact that. So we're given 3 dimensions. There's hyper dimension where Gridman is from. There's the whatever dimension Akane is from, which I interpret as ours, and then this dimension that the anime takes place in. And I think this does continue after she leaves. That's just how I interpreted it, though.
Yeah, my big question is whether or not this world is truly under her control or whether she invaded. And the reason that I think this is important is because from the beginning, she's had to correct things, which means that there were things in place that were not according to her desires. If you create something from scratch, you have no reason to create things that are against your desires. So is this, I really wonder if like there wasn't something already like a fundamental thing there, or a seed that just she can't control and it's randomly generated. I don't know. It's just really weird.
I think that last one is the closest thing. I like I said, everything in this city I think is of her design, but even of her design, because of her mental state, it's not actually perfect to her, or like I think, because she actually hates herself. Even a perfect world to her is still bad. But
corrected.
But I think someone even points out, like, she couldn't control everything. There were basically RNG, like Yuta's crush on Rika. That's a huge plot point. That's a huge major moment. Like I said earlier, the fact Yuta likes Rika, the fact that ship happens is like the basis for almost everything that happens.
Yeah, because otherwise, Gridman wouldn't have had a body that he could inhabit.
Right. Gridman needed someone who wasn't in love with Akane. And everyone else was designed to be. And for some reason, Yuta wasn't.
Yeah, this very, very much felt like a user interfacing with a blank slate world. And that there are overarching rules that happen, but you can input things that you want. You know, similar to the SimCity analogy, I want this section to be commercial property, and then the programming of the world will then generate whatever it is from that area.
Yeah, that's exactly how I interpreted it.
That's really interesting. There's a game that I can't remember the name of the guy. I think it's Mark something. He is making a game called Ultima Ratio Regum, and he's been working on it for years. Big fan of Dwarf Fortress and a lot of the other roguelike games out there. And his is basically this, like you get a world that it generates its own history and religions and just everything that's happened. And then as you go through the world, you can change things in history from the point in the world you're at, and it will regenerate the history. At least this was his intention. I don't know. I stopped following him a while back because he got bogged down with some school stuff, but this almost seems like this anime represents that idea, which to me makes me want to go pick up Ultima Ratio Regum and try and see if it's anything like where he was hoping to go with it.
All right, I'm going to push us through to the end. Okay. We do find out here what the SSSS means when they enter in that password, which the password for Gridman is Gridman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes,
it means special signature to save a soul.
Oh God.
Gridman's literally there to save Akane. That's
I thought it was
what's happening.
Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad.
No, those are Power Rangers.
Oh, really?
You see?
Superhuman Samurai. No, that's the American version of Gridman, isn't it?
Is it
with Matthew Lawrence as the main character?
Oh, I think you're right.
And yes, they put the cyber with an S because what? So
why not?
I think you're supposed to think that's what the SSSS stands for. By the way, they did take ideas from the American version and added into here, including people turning into weapons for Gridman to use. Where I think in the original, it was a programmer who just made the weapons, and then in the American version, he had friends turn into weapons for him. So I do think the SSSS is a reference, but in this anime, Gridman is literally here to save Akane's soul.
Okay.
I like it. They've completely repurposed everything and thrown a loop. I mean, even the amnesia, they gave a good justifiable reason for it. I like it.
Okay, so you guys mentioned hating the fixer beam. How did you feel about punching with the power of mortality?
Oh God!
The way they were coming into each other, I leaned over to my kid and I was like, "Oh, they're gonna kiss." Like,
and this is when he punches him with the power of mortality. That's when the world appears, not when she went through the door. Anyway, moving us to the ending. Akane and Rika have a conversation that Akane is leaving. She says she can't stay in this world after everything she's done. Rika gives her the pocket book that Jeremy's been mentioning. I had to really think about this line. Rika says, "I wish we could be together and I hope it doesn't come true." Which, really emphasized that I love you as a friend, but also the best thing for you is not to stay here in this world. Like, I want what's best for you, even though I care about you so much as a friend. Right? I might keep going.
Yeah.
So Akane then disappears. Then Gridman leaves, and actually that room they're in, that's from the original Gridman show. That was the portal he used to get to cyberspace. I think it's inside Junk. I think this last scene takes place inside Junk, and then they basically talk about, I came here because Yuta was in love with Rika. Rika freaks out about that. He's like, that made it possible to take over his body. But he's been asleep this whole time, so you guys will need to be there for him when he wakes up. And then all the junior high school club and Gridman, and the bad guy, caught in a little cage. He's a little smoke thing now. They fly away back to the hyper dimension because he's a hyper dimension agent.
See, that's what sucks about immortality is if you can't die, you can be tortured forever.
So those things worse than death.
I saw the cage. I was like, oh, he's going back as a bad guy. But then, if this is inside Junk, does that mean this is the first time Utsume and Rika have been in Junk then?
Yeah, but I am guessing at that. That is mine.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know where else this would be, though.
Right.
And just from watching a few YouTube clips of the original Gridman, or actually the American Gridman, the room he's in before he flies off to fight bad guys in cyberspace is this yellow room. Anyway, one last time. The world returns to normal. Everyone goes back to living their life. They wait for Yuta to finally awaken, and the last thing we see is the kaiju girl taking care of Auntie and explaining that, my family, and then we see the monster. He takes off his bandage over his eye, and he has now a blue eye, signifying either a human eye or a Gridman eye.
Yeah, they all have very unusual eyes in this anime, the way they're drawn, but his almost seemed to have energy in it.
Yeah.
Like
I kept wondering if that meant something or if it was just an artistic choice. It drove me crazy, the entire anime. Does that mean something? And no, it doesn't.
Yeah. No.
And the final shot, which I don't know if I've ever seen an anime do this, except for maybe Evangelion had a live action scene. It's a live action. We see the pocketbook on a girl's thing, and that she's buried under covers and wakes up. Which again, I thought kind of lent to the idea of depression because it's sun and you cover yourself up. She's hiding from the world, now is waking up and deciding to go back out into the world. But this is Akane in what I assume is our world, waking up and is done with this fantasy world she was god of. And that is the end.
Is that book a passport book?
That's what they called it.
I think it was like to hold like train passes,
bus passes,
and,
okay.
Because they were riding the bus together. I think it was specifically for that.
So it's a like get out kind of thing. Because she purchased it so long ago, I thought was she already thinking Akane has to leave, or was it just the friendly? You ride buses, I ride buses. I'm going to get something nice for you.
No. So if you pay close attention, Rika puts her pocketbook thing across the scanner, and then Rika does, and then Akame goes to put her, and it's just the pass. It's the actual pass, meaning she didn't have a book, and so Rika was like, "Oh, she doesn't have a book. I'm going to get her one."
I completely missed that, and that's something about this anime. It'd almost be worth a second watch to go back and be like, oh, that's why the pocketbook, and that's going to come back later. And the marble thing.
Well, another detail that I wanted to bring up, I didn't get time to. There is like episode after episode after she's stabbed Yuta, she still has blood on her face and on her hands.
Yes. Yes, she did.
She's got it on her for like 3 episodes.
Yep.
Okay, let's go to our final reviews and wrap this up.
This for me was. Who chose it?
I chose it, and I liked it. I mean, I can go first if you want.
I'll go first. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna give this a high 3. I can't quite give it a 4. It just didn't hit quite a few bars. I think if there was a second season that expanded upon this idea of worlds within worlds kind of thing, I was a little confused about the ending because there was such little explanation. I really liked where they were going with it, but the teenage angst and the fights were mediocre. So it was good. It's worth a watch, but it's just not, of caliber of other things we've watched.
Okay, Jeremy, how about you?
I think that it really surprised me because it was like they wanted to take what you would expect out of a Gridman show or anything from that type of genre. and pretend to give you that and then subvert your expectations and give you something that's completely different. First off, like headed in the direction of teen angst and drama and emotions and all that. But given in doses that it's reasonable and I can stand it and it's interesting. And then on top of that, having like this psychological exploration into depression and the weird, almost mystical approach to what the world is. And then finding out from the things that you did research wise to things you mentioned that they did a really good job of sticking to all of those points. I kind of have to give it a 4 myself just because they did such a good job with those things. And I really was drawn into the psychological aspect of it. So yeah, I think 4 for me.
A high 4 for me because almost everything Jeremy said. The kaiju reference stuff was enough to get me interested, the mystery of the reality that felt very, as someone who just watched the entire Matrix trilogy, I was like getting Matrix vibes of what is real, what is going on, and that hooked me really hard. I really wanted to know, and they paced that mystery so well. You didn't only find out at the very end. They but halfway through, like, okay, this character is the god, okay, and this character made us like her, and then here's why the god has these powers. The ending's a little muddled in feelings. I do admit that, and not every character is as good as they could be, and a lot of the fights do kind of get bland. If this only had just the fights, it wouldn't last very long. They're cool at first, but then by the end, I was like, I don't want to hear about the fights. Let's go back to Akane just sitting in her room surrounded by trash. And what does that symbolize? Does she think she's trash? Oh my god, I need to analyze everything. Show me the marble again. So 4 for me. Okay, I've been down a lot of conspiracy plot theories lately, and this was feeding my problems. Okay,
what is Akane's line? No. Let's.
Our next anime is Goblin Slayer. Now, we do want to give a mature content warning. This has an infamous first episode that even it's almost impossible not to know about it by this point. So if like content you would see in Game of Thrones or something bugs you, then you might want to be careful about watching this one. But we are big fans of dark fantasy, and we're excited to see what they do with it. So we are going to be watching it. So that is next for us. If you have any thoughts on Gridman, on things we missed, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff we missed. We would love to hear it, or thoughts on the anime that's coming up. You can reach us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast, or email the animebakaclub@gmail.com, or leave a comment wherever you found this podcast, and it will get to us and we'll get back to you. Thank you everyone who does comment. We appreciate that so much. We had comments on our last minisode that was like, oh, you guys are smarter than us. We do not make that up. All right, so let's wrap up and say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Sayonara.